The ship landed on at exactly the time the invitation had said. Stepped out first, his boots touching alien ground for the first time in his life. The air smelled strange, like flowers mixed with something metal. He took a deep breath and looked around. Was beautiful. The sky was purple with three small suns hanging low on the horizon. Tall buildings made of white crystal rose up all around the landing platform. Everything seemed to glow with soft light. Had seen pictures before, but pictures could not show how amazing this place truly was. Ambassador said, stepping out behind him. She was his translator and advisor, a young woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice. The welcome party is approaching. Nodded, he could see them now. 5 tall creatures walking toward the ship. They had blue skin and 4 arms each. Their faces were long, with large black eyes that showed no emotion. These were one of the oldest species in the known galaxy. Remember, whispered, they do not shake hands. A small bow of the head is their greeting. Gave a small bow when they reached him. The leader of the group, a female with silver marks on her forehead, returned the gesture. I am advisor, she said through a small device on her chest that translated her words. Welcome to Human Ambassador. The Queen has been waiting for you. Thank you for receiving us, replied. Earth is honored by this invitation. His large eyes studied him for a moment. There was something in her look that could not read. Was it curiosity or something else? Follow me, said. The Grand Hall is not far. They walked through the crystal streets of the capital city. Noticed that many stopped to watch them pass. Some pointed. Others whispered to each other. Humans were still new to this part of the galaxy. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. To species like who had been traveling the stars for thousands of years, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. There will be many delegates at the gathering, explained as they walked. Representatives from over 100 worlds. The Queen calls such meetings only once every 10 cycles. It is a great honor that Earth was invited. We understand, said. We are grateful. Glanced at him again with that strange look. The Queen is particular about respect. All who enter her hall must follow the proper ways. You have been told of these ways, yes? Yes, answered quickly. We have studied all the protocols. Good, said, but she did not sound entirely convinced. They reached the Grand Hall after walking for 20 minutes, stopped and looked up. The building was enormous, bigger than anything he had ever seen on Earth. It was made of the same white crystal as everything else, but here the crystal was carved with incredible detail. Images of stars and planets covered every surface. At the very top, a statue of a female looked down at all who entered. The Queen guessed. This way, said. The doors opened and stepped inside. What he saw took his breath away. The hall was filled with thousands of beings. There were creatures of every shape and size. Some were tall and thin like others were short and round. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some looked like nothing had ever imagined. The sound of hundreds of different languages filled the air like music. Stay close, said quietly, and remember. I know, said, follow the protocols. They walked through the crowd toward the front of the hall. Many aliens turned to look at them, heard whispers. Humans. The new species. So young, so fragile. Kept his face calm. He was used to this. Since Earth had joined the galactic community, humans had always been treated as lesser beings. They were too young, too weak, too primitive. It did not matter that humans had survived ice ages, wars, and diseases. It did not matter that they had built great civilizations and traveled to their own moon with technology made from simple metals. To the galaxy, humans were nothing special. But was not here to prove anything. He was here as a representative of his planet, nothing more. His job was to listen, to learn, and to make connections that would help Earth grow. They found their place among the other delegates, pulled out a small device and began taking notes about the species around them, simply watched and waited. An hour passed, then another. The hall grew more and more crowded. The noise grew louder. Could feel the excitement in the air. Something was about to happen. Then suddenly, everything went silent. A deep sound rang through the hall. It was like a bell, but deeper, more powerful. It seemed to shake the very walls. Every being in the room turned toward the front of the hall, where a massive door was slowly opening. "She comes," his voice said from somewhere nearby. "The queen approaches." Light poured through the opening door. Golden light, bright and warm, had to shield his eyes for a moment. When he looked again, he saw her. Queen was taller than any had seen. She moved slowly, gracefully, like water flowing over stone. Her skin was not blue like the others, but silver, shining like metal in the light. 4 arms hung at her sides, each one covered in golden rings. Her face was beautiful and terrible at the same time. 4 eyes, all of them black as space, looked out over the crowd. She wore a robe of pure white that trailed behind her for many meters. On her head sat a crown made of light itself, glowing and shifting like a living thing. The queen stepped onto a raised platform at the front of the hall. She said nothing. She did not need to. Her presence alone commanded everything. And then, as one, every being in the grand hall dropped to their knees. Watched as thousands of creatures bowed their heads to the floor. The tall ones, the short ones, the proud warriors and the gentle scholars. Every single one of them pressed their foreheads to the ground in complete submission. "Grab's arm. Kneel," she whispered urgently. "You have to kneel." But did not move. He stood there alone, the only figure still standing in a sea of bowed heads. His heart was beating fast, but his legs would not bend. Something deep inside him, something older than thought, refused to let him kneel. The queen's 4 eyes found him across the hall. They locked onto him like weapons finding their target. And in that moment, knew that everything was about to change. The silence in the grand hall was complete. It was the kind of silence that pressed against the ears, heavy and thick. Not a single creature moved. Not a single breath could be heard. Thousands of beings knelt with their heads touching the cold crystal floor, and above them all, standing alone like a tree in an empty field, was. His hand was still gripping his arm. Her fingers were shaking. She did not look up, but her whisper cut through the silence like a knife. "Please, you must kneel. You do not understand what you are doing." But understood perfectly. That was the problem. He understood what kneeling meant. On Earth, throughout all of human history, kneeling before another person meant giving up your dignity. It meant accepting that someone else was better than you, more important than you, more worthy of respect than you could ever be. Humans had knelt before kings and emperors. They had knelt before gods and masters, and every time it had cost them something, their freedom, their pride, their sense of self. Was not a proud man. He did not think he was better than anyone else in this hall, but he could not, would not, press his face to the floor like he was nothing. Not for anyone, not even for a queen who ruled 12 star systems. So he stood. The queen's eyes had not moved from him. Those 4 black orbs stared at him across the vast hall and could feel them like physical weight on his chest. He forced himself to breathe slowly. He kept his face calm. He looked back at her without fear. Seconds passed. They felt like hours. Then the whispers began. At first they were so quiet that could barely hear them. Small sounds coming from the creatures around him. But the whispers grew. They spread through the hall like fire through dry grass. Soon, the air was filled with voices speaking in dozens of different languages. "The human stands. Does he not know? This is madness. He will be killed. The fool, the absolute fool." Ignored them all. He kept his eyes on the queen. Advisor appeared beside him. Her blue face had gone pale, and her 4 hands were pressed together in front of her chest in what looked like prayer. "Ambassador," she said, her voice tight with fear, "you must kneel immediately. The queen does not forgive this insult." I mean no insult, said calmly. I am simply standing. Standing is the insult. His voice rose slightly. No one stands before the queen. No one, not the great warriors of the iron systems, not the wise elders of the crystal worlds, not even the ancient beings who were old when our stars were young. All bow before queen, all. Then I will be the first who does not, said. Stared at him. Her large eyes were wide with something between horror and amazement. She opened her mouth to speak again, but before she could, a sound cut through the hall. It was the queen's voice. She had not spoken words yet, but she had made a sound, a single, low note that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The whispers died instantly. The silence returned, even heavier than before. Watched as the queen raised one of her four arms. She pointed directly at him. Her long silver finger was like an arrow aimed at his heart. Guards began to move. They came from the sides of the hall, tall warriors in armor that shone like mirrors. They carried weapons that did not recognize, long poles with glowing ends that crackled with energy. There were 20 of them, then 50, then 100. They formed a circle around the area where stood. The other delegates scrambled away. Even those who had been kneeling nearby found the strength to crawl to safer positions. Within moments, stood alone in a wide, empty space, surrounded by armed guards. Only remained near him. She had finally looked up and her face was white with fear, but she did not run. She stayed at his side. This is your last chance, human, one of the guards said. He was larger than the others, with scars on his face that spoke of many battles. Kneel before the queen or face the consequences. Looked at the guard. He looked at the weapons pointed at him. He looked at the thousands of aliens watching from their knees. Finally, he looked back at the queen. I will not kneel, he said. His voice was clear and steady. It carried through the silent hall so that everyone could hear. I came here in peace. I came here with respect, but I will not kneel. The guard raised his weapon. Wait, said suddenly. She stepped forward, putting herself between and the guard. Her voice was shaking, but she spoke anyway. Please wait. Let me speak. The guard paused. He looked toward the queen's platform. After a moment, he lowered his weapon slightly. Speak quickly, he said. Turned to face the room. She was small among all these tall aliens, but her voice was strong. I am translator for the human delegation. I know that our ambassador has broken your protocol. I know that this seems like a great insult to your queen, but please let me explain. She took a deep breath. Humans are a young species. We have only been among the stars for 50 of our years. We do not know all the ways of the galaxy. We are still learning. That is no excuse, the guard growled. No, agreed. It is not, but there is something you should understand about us, something important. She paused, gathering her thoughts. In human history, we have had many rulers, kings and queens, emperors and presidents. Some were good, some were terrible, but there is one thing we learned over thousands of years of suffering and struggle. We learned that no person, no matter how powerful, has the right to demand complete submission from another. The hall was completely silent now. Every eye was on. When humans kneel, she continued, we do it by choice. We kneel to honor our dead. We kneel when we propose marriage to someone we love. We kneel in prayer to our gods, but we do not kneel simply because someone tells us to. We do not kneel because we are afraid. That is not in our nature. She turned to look at the queen. My ambassador means no disrespect to you or your throne. He is not saying that he is better than you or anyone else. He is simply being human. He is being what his people have always been. He is being free. Stopped speaking, the silence stretched on. Felt a wave of gratitude toward her. She had put herself in danger to explain something that he could not put into words. She had stood beside him when everyone else had run away. But would it be enough? The queen had not moved during speech. She sat on her high platform like a statue carved from silver and light. Her 4 eyes were impossible to read. Her face showed nothing. Then slowly she stood. Every being in the hall pressed themselves even lower to the floor. The guards took steps backward. Even the air seemed to grow heavier as the queen began to walk forward. She descended from her platform. She walked across the hall. She was coming toward, moved back to stand beside him, could feel her trembling, but she did not leave. He reached out and took her hand. Whatever was about to happen, they would face it together. The queen stopped just a few meters away. Up close, she was even more terrifying. Her silver skin seemed to glow with inner light. Her crown of pure energy hummed with power. She was ancient and beautiful and dangerous. For a long moment, she simply looked at them. Then she opened her mouth and spoke. The queen's voice filled the grand hall like thunder rolling across mountains. It was deep and powerful, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The walls shook. The floor trembled. The very air vibrated with the force of her words. "You dare stand before me, human?" Felt the words hit him like physical blows. His ears rang. His chest tightened. For a moment he could not breathe. The queen's voice carried more than just sound. It carried power, ancient and terrible power that had crushed armies and broken worlds. But he did not fall. He did not kneel. He stood. "Yes," he said. His voice was small compared to hers, but it was steady. "I dare." A gasp went through the crowd. The guards raised their weapons again. Advisor made a sound like a wounded animal, but the queen raised one hand and everyone froze. "You dare," the queen repeated. Her 4 eyes narrowed. She took another step closer too. Now they were only a meter apart. He could see every detail of her silver face, every line and curve that showed her great age. She was beautiful, but hers was the beauty of a storm, of a fire, of things that could destroy as easily as a maze. "Do you know who I am, human? Do you know what I have done?" "You are queen," said, "ruler of 12 star systems, commander of the greatest fleet in the galaxy. You have lived for over 2,000 years. You have won 100 wars. You have conquered worlds and freed others. Your name is spoken with fear and respect across all of known space." The queen tilted her head slightly. "You have studied." "I have." "Then you know what I can do to you. With a single word, I can have you torn apart. With a wave of my hand, I can destroy your ship, your delegation, your planet. I have crushed species far older and stronger than yours. Entire civilizations have been wiped from existence because they dared to disrespect me." Swallowed, his throat was dry, but he kept his voice calm. "I know all of this, and yet I stand." The queen's face changed. Something flickered in her eyes. Anger, yes, but something else too, something that could not identify. "Why?" she demanded. "Why do you stand when all others kneel? Is it pride? Is it stupidity? Do you think yourself above the rules that govern all beings in my hall?" "No," said, "I do not think myself above anyone, and I am not too proud to kneel. I have knelt many times in my life." "Then kneel now." The queen's voice rose to a roar. The walls cracked. Crystal fell from the ceiling like rain. Several of the weaker aliens in the crowd fainted from the force of her fury. "Kneel before me, human, or I will show you what true power looks like." His body was shaking. Every part of him wanted to drop to the floor. The queen's power was pressing down on him like the weight of a planet. He could feel his legs weakening, his spine bending. It would be so easy to just let go, to fall, to give in. But he thought of Earth. He thought of all the humans who had fought and died for freedom throughout history. He thought of slaves who had refused to break. He thought of prisoners who had kept their dignity even in chains. He thought of all the ordinary people who had stood up against kings and tyrants and said no, when everything told them to say yes. He was not just a simple ambassador from a young planet. He was the representative of billions of humans. He carried their spirit inside him, and that spirit would not bend. "I will kneel when I choose to kneel," he said, "not because you command it." The queen stared at him. The fury in her eyes was like fire. For a long, terrible moment was certain that she would kill him. He could see it in her face, in the way her hands curled into fists, in the way energy crackled around her crown. Then spoke. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "please, may I speak?" The queen's eyes moved too. The anger did not fade, but something in her expression shifted. "You may speak," she said coldly, "but choose your words carefully, small one." Bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I wish to tell you a story from human history, if you will allow me." The queen said nothing, which took as permission. "Thousands of years ago," began, "there was a great king on our world. He ruled a vast empire. He had armies that could not be defeated. He had wealth beyond counting. Everyone who met him bowed to the ground. Everyone called him a god." Paused and looked up at the queen. One day, a messenger came from a small country at the edge of his empire. The messenger was a simple man, a farmer's son. When he entered the king's hall, everyone expected him to bow like all the others. But he did not. He stood straight and looked the king in the eye. The queen's expression did not change, but could tell she was listening. "The king was furious," continued. "He demanded to know why this simple farmer's son dared to disrespect him. The messenger answered with a question of his own. He asked, 'If everyone bows to you, how will you know who truly respects you?'" The hall was completely silent. The king did not understand at first, but the messenger explained. He said, "When everyone is forced to bow, bowing means nothing. It is just fear wearing the mask of respect. But when someone stands before you by choice, when someone shows you honor without being afraid, that is true respect. That is worth more than 1,000 bowed heads." Took a deep breath. The king thought about this for a long time. In the end, he did not kill the messenger. Instead, he made him his most trusted advisor. Because he understood that a person who stands when they could kneel, who speaks truth when they could lie, who shows courage when they could show fear, that is a person worth keeping close. Finished her story and looked at the queen. "My ambassador does not stand because he hates you or disrespects you. He stands because that is who he is. Humans do not bow to show respect. We stand to show it. We meet others as equals, not as subjects. This is our way. It is in our blood." The queen stood motionless for a long time. Her 4 eyes moved between, and the energy around her crown flickered and danced. The guards watched with weapons ready, waiting for her command. Then the queen did something that shocked everyone in the hall. She laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was not a cruel laugh. It was something in between, a sound of surprise and wonder and disbelief. It echoed through the hall like music, and every being who heard it froze in amazement. Because Queen had not laughed in over 300 years. "Humans," she said, and her voice was no longer full of thunder. It was almost soft. "You are either the bravest species I have ever met or the most foolish." Found his voice. "Perhaps both, Your Majesty." The queen looked at him for a long moment. Then something changed in her eyes. The anger faded. In its place was something new, something that looked almost like interest. "Perhaps," she said, "perhaps both indeed." She turned to face the hall full of kneeling delegates. "Rise," she commanded. "All of you rise." Slowly, uncertainly, the thousands of aliens got to their feet. They looked at each other in confusion. They looked at with wonder. What had just happened? What did it mean? The queen turned back to. "You have my attention, human," she said. "Now let us see if you have earned it." The grand hall had changed. The air felt different now, lighter somehow. The thousands of delegates who had been kneeling moments ago now stood in confused clusters, whispering to each other. The guards had lowered their weapons, though they still watched with suspicious eyes. Queen had returned to her platform, but she had not sat down on her throne. Instead, she stood at the edge, looking down at the crowd below. Her 4 eyes moved from face to face, studying the reactions of her subjects and guests. Bring the human forward, she commanded. Two guards stepped toward, but he raised his hand. I can walk on my own, he said. The guards looked at the Queen. She nodded slightly and they stepped back. Walked through the crowd toward the platform, followed close behind him. The aliens parted to let them through, staring at them like they were strange creatures from another dimension. In a way, supposed they were. He stopped at the base of the platform and looked up at the Queen. She was even more impressive from this angle, tall and shining against the light of her crystal throne. Human, she said, what is your name? Your Majesty, Ambassador of Earth. She repeated as if tasting the word. Tell me, Ambassador, if you will not kneel to show respect, how do your people honor those above them? Thought carefully before answering. This was important. One wrong word could still mean death for him and perhaps even war for Earth. We have many ways, Your Majesty, he said. We bow our heads, we shake hands, we speak words of praise, we give gifts. We work hard to serve those we respect, but most importantly, we give them our honesty. Honesty? The Queen raised one eyebrow. How is honesty a form of respect? Because it is easy to tell lies to powerful people, explained. Everyone around them says what they think the powerful want to hear. They hide the truth because they are afraid. But true respect means treating someone as worthy of the truth, even when that truth is difficult. The Queen was silent for a moment. Her 4 eyes studied him with new interest. And what truth would you tell me, Ambassador? What would you say to me that others are afraid to say? Felt's hand on his arm squeezing in warning. He ignored it. I would tell you that your empire is impressive, but it is not perfect. I would tell you that many of your subjects kneel out of fear, not love. I would tell you that strength alone does not make a ruler great. I would tell you that even the mightiest queen in the galaxy is still just a person, with flaws and doubts like anyone else. Gasps echoed through the hall. Several advisors on the platform looked horrified. The guards gripped their weapons tightly, but the Queen simply stood there, her expression unreadable. You speak boldly, she said finally. You asked for the truth, replied. The truth is often bold. Another long silence. Then the Queen did something unexpected. She descended from her platform once again. She walked down the crystal steps until she stood directly in front of, so close he could see the tiny patterns in her silver skin. In 2,000 years, she said quietly, no one has spoken to me like you just did. Not my advisors, not my enemies, not even my family. She paused. They were all too afraid. They bowed and they smiled and they told me what I wanted to hear, and I let them because it was easier, because the truth is painful and power makes it easy to avoid pain. Her voice grew softer still. I have forgotten what honesty sounds like. Felt something shift in his chest. Looking at the Queen now, he did not see a terrible ruler or a dangerous enemy. He saw someone who was tired, someone who had been alone at the top for so long that she had forgotten what real connection felt like. Then let me offer you honesty, Your Majesty, he said gently, and let me offer something else as well. What? Friendship. The word hung in the air. Around them the hall held its breath. Friendship, the Queen repeated. You offer friendship to me, after I threatened to destroy you and your world. Yes, said, because friendship is not something that only exists between equals. It is not something that only exists between those who have always agreed. True friendship can grow between the most different of beings in the most unlikely of circumstances. All it requires is honesty, respect, and the willingness to try. Stepped forward and spoke. Your Majesty, Earth is a small world. We have no great fleets. We have no ancient wisdom. We have only been among the stars for a short time, but we have survived much. We have learned much, and we have something to offer that you may not find elsewhere. And what is that? The Queen asked. A different perspective, said. We are young enough to see things with fresh eyes. We are bold enough to speak when others stay silent. We are stubborn enough to stand when others kneel. Perhaps that is what your empire needs. Not another subject, but a partner. Not another voice telling you what you want to hear, but a voice telling you what you need to hear. The queen looked between, and her expression was changing slowly like ice melting in spring. The hardness in her eyes was softening. The tension in her body was easing. "You are strange creatures," she said. "In all my years I have never met anyone quite like you." "We will take that as a compliment," said with a small smile. For a moment, just a brief moment, the corner of the queen's mouth twitched. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. "Tell me about your world," she said. "Tell me about Earth and its people. I want to understand how you became what you are." So told her. He told her about human history, about the wars and the peace, the discoveries and the disasters. He told her about how humans had started as simple creatures on a small blue planet, how they had learned to use tools and fire, how they had built cities and ships, and eventually found their way to the stars. He told her about human culture, about art and music and stories. He told her about love and family, about friendship and loyalty. He told her about the human spirit, that strange and wonderful thing that made humans keep fighting even when everything seemed lost. And the queen listened. She asked questions. She nodded. She even laughed once or twice at the stranger parts of human behavior. Around them, the delegates watched in amazement. Never before had they seen their queen stand among them like this, talking with a visitor as if he were an old friend. Never before had they seen her show such interest in a lesser species. Hours passed. The three suns have moved across the purple sky, still, and the queen talked. Finally, as the lights in the hall began to dim for the evening cycle, the queen held up her hand. "Enough for today," she said. "We will continue this conversation tomorrow, but first I must make an announcement." She turned to face the entire hall. Her voice rang out strong and clear. "Listen well, all of you. What you have witnessed today is something new, something that has not happened in the history of my reign." Every eye was on her. "The human ambassador has shown me something I had forgotten. He has shown me courage, honesty, and a different kind of respect. For this, I will give him and his people a gift." She paused, letting the anticipation build. "Humanity will not be treated as a lesser species in my empire. From this day forward, they will be considered equals. They will have a voice in my council. They will have access to our knowledge and technology. They will be our partners in building a better future for all." The hall erupted in noise. Some delegates shouted in protest, others cheered, most simply stared in shock, but did not hear any of it. He was looking at the queen, and she was looking back at him. In her four dark eyes, he saw something he had not expected to find. Hope. The announcement sent waves through the entire galaxy. Within hours, news of what had happened in the Grand Hall reached every corner of known space. The human who stood, the queen who laughed, the partnership that no one expected. Some species reacted with anger. The proud warriors of the iron systems called it a disgrace. How could a young, weak species be given the same status as empires that had existed for thousands of years? How could kneeling be optional for some but required for others? Others reacted with curiosity. Who were these humans? What made them so special? If they could earn the queen's respect by simply standing up, what else might they be capable of? But on Earth, the reaction was different. When the news arrived, people celebrated in the streets. They laughed and cried and hugged each other. For the first time since joining the galactic community, humans felt like they truly belonged among the stars. Watched all of this from the guest quarters he had been given in the Queen's palace. The rooms were larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, with walls of crystal that looked out over the shining city below. It was beautiful, but he barely noticed. He was tired. The past day had drained everything from him. Standing up to the Queen, saying the things he said, not knowing if each word would be his last. It had taken more courage than he knew he had. "You should rest," said, coming to stand beside him. She handed him a cup of something warm. It smelled like tea, but "I cannot," said. "My mind is too full." "You are thinking about what happens next." "I am thinking about everything." He took a sip of the drink. It was good. "I am thinking about whether I made the right choice, whether standing was worth the risk." Smiled softly. "We are still alive. Earth has been raised to equal status. I would say it was worth it." "But what if it had gone wrong?" Turned to face her. "What if the Queen had killed us? What if she had declared war on Earth? Billions of lives depended on what I did in that hall, and I acted on instinct. I did not think. I just stood." Was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised him. "Do you remember what you told me when we first began training for this mission?" Frowned. "What did I say?" "You said that the most important thing for an ambassador is not to represent what their government wants. It is to represent who their people are. You said that if we tried to be something we are not, we would fail. But if we showed the galaxy what humans truly are, we might find our place among the stars." Remembered now. It had been a late night months ago when they were still preparing for the journey. "You did exactly what you said you would do," continued. "You showed them who we are, and they respected us for it." Before could respond, there was a soft chime at the door. He looked up to see Advisor entering the room. She looked different now, less afraid, more curious. "Ambassador," she said, "the Queen requests your presence in her private chambers." Exchanged a glance with. A private audience with the Queen was unusual, but he nodded and followed through the crystal halls of the palace. They walked for several minutes, passing through corridors that grew smaller and less formal. The grand architecture gave way to simpler designs. The crowds of servants and guards thinned until there was no one at all. Finally, they reached a plain door made of dark wood. It looked out of place among all the crystal and light. "The Queen is inside," said. "You will enter alone." Took a deep breath and opened the door. The room beyond was nothing like he expected. It was small and warm, filled with soft furniture and gentle light. Plants grew in pots near the windows. Books were stacked on every surface. It looked like the private room of a scholar, not a queen. And there, sitting in a simple chair by the window, was Queen. She was not wearing her crown or her royal robes. She looked almost ordinary, if a 2,000-year-old silver-skinned alien could ever look ordinary. "Please," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her. "Sit." Sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I have been thinking about you," the Queen said finally. "About what you did, what you said. I have been trying to understand it." "And have you succeeded, Your Majesty?" She smiled slightly. "Perhaps, but I still have questions." "Ask them." The Queen leaned forward. "You knew you might die. You knew I could destroy everything you loved with a single command. Yet you stood anyway. Why? What made you so certain it was the right thing to do?" Considered the question carefully. "I was not certain," he admitted. "I was terrified. Every part of me wanted to kneel. It would have been so easy." "Then why did you not?" "Because," searched for the right words, "because if I had knelt, I would not have been representing humanity anymore. I would have been representing fear, and fear is not who we are." The Queen nodded slowly. "I have ruled for over 2,000 years. In that time I have met countless species and individuals. All of them knelt. All of them told me what I wanted to hear. I became so used to it that I forgot there could be any other way." She paused, looking out the window at the city below. "Do you know why I laughed in the hall? It was not because I thought you were funny. It was because I felt something I had not felt in centuries. Surprise. Real, genuine surprise. Someone had finally done something I did not expect." "I am glad I could provide entertainment," said with a small smile. The Queen laughed again, a soft sound this time. "You are strange, human, but I find that I like you." "I am honored, Your Majesty," she said. "Blink to what?" Call me, when we are alone like this, there is no need for titles. For a moment, did not know what to say. This was the most powerful being in 12-star systems, and she was asking him to use her first name. Very well, he said. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. I want you to understand something, she said. What I announced in the hall was not just a reward for your courage. It was a decision I have been considering for a long time. My empire is strong, but it is stagnant. We have not grown or changed in centuries. We have become comfortable, and comfort leads to weakness. She looked directly at. Your people are young and bold. You see the universe with fresh eyes. You are not afraid to challenge tradition, to stand when you should kneel, to speak when you should stay silent. That is exactly what my empire needs. Partners who will push us forward, not subjects who will hold us back. Felt the weight of her words settling on his shoulders. This was more than just recognition for Earth. This was an invitation to help shape the future of the galaxy. What would you have us do? He asked. Join my council, said. Bring your ideas, your perspectives, your stubborn refusal to bow. Help me build something new. Help me remember what it means to be alive. She extended her hand toward him. It was a human gesture, one she must have learned just for this moment. Looked at her hand. Then he looked at her face, at those four ancient eyes that had seen so much but still held room for wonder. He reached out and shook her hand. Humanity would be honored to stand beside you, he said. Not below you, not above you, beside you. His grip was firm and warm. Then let us begin, she said. Outside the window, the three suns were setting, painting the purple sky in shades of gold and orange. A new day was ending. But for humanity and for the Empire, something far more important was just beginning. As walked back to his quarters that night, he thought about everything that had happened. One small choice, one moment of stubbornness, had changed the course of history. He had entered the Grand Hall as a representative of a young, unknown species. He was leaving as a partner to the most powerful empire in the galaxy. All because he refused to kneel. Back on Earth would later write in her report, the humans stood, and the universe made room. It would become the most famous sentence in human history.